Ethan slowly opened his eyes. His body ached, and his head throbbed. The last thing he remembered was his ship losing control, alarms blaring, and then darkness. Now, he was lying on soft, moss-like ground. Above him, the sky was a deep shade of purple, with twin moons casting a faint glow. Strange trees surrounded him, their trunks shimmering like liquid silver, their leaves pulsing with a gentle blue light. The air was thick, warm, and carried a scent that reminded him of rain and metal. Pushing himself up, Ethan checked his suit. Torn in a few places but still intact. His helmet was missing. Strangely, he could breathe. That meant this planet had an atmosphere similar to Earth's. Then, he noticed it. The crystal in his hand. It was the only thing he had managed to grab before his ship crashed. The crystal was small, smooth, and pulsed with a soft white light. Ethan didn't know what it was, but something about it felt important. He took a deep breath and looked around. His ship was nowhere in sight. No wreckage, no smoke, nothing. Great, he muttered. Stranded on an alien planet with no ship, no supplies, and no clue where I am. A sudden rustling sound made him freeze. Something was moving in the trees. Watching him. Ethan tightened his grip on the crystal and turned slowly. He wasn't alone. A sudden sound. Ethan turned sharply. Something, or someone, was nearby. He gripped the glowing crystal tightly, heart pounding. The strange forest was silent, except for the rustling of leaves. Then he saw her. The mysterious warrior. Leaning against a large stone was a woman, tall, graceful, and wounded. Her silver-toned skin shimmered faintly under the blue glow of the trees. Her eyes, fiery and intense, locked onto him with caution. She wore high-tech battle armor, sleek but damaged. A deep gash on her arm dripped glowing blue blood. In her hand, she clutched a weapon, a long, curved blade with intricate alien symbols. Tension and suspicion. Ethan raised his hand slowly, trying to show he meant no harm. The warrior's eyes flicked to the crystal in his hand, and for a moment, her expression changed. Shock, recognition, fear? Where did you get that? She demanded, her voice weak but firm. Ethan hesitated. I found it, he admitted. Her grip on the sword tightened. You don't understand what you're holding, she said, her breath uneven. Ethan glanced at the crystal. It pulsed softly, as if alive. Then help me understand, he said. The warrior studied him for a long moment, then winced in pain. She was losing strength. A moment of trust. Ethan stepped closer. She flinched but didn't attack. Carefully, he knelt beside her and reached for a small medical kit from his belt. Let me help, he said. She hesitated, then finally nodded. As Ethan worked to stop the bleeding, he realized something. This wasn't just any warrior. She was running from something. And now, because of the crystal, he was part of it too. A distant roar. Ethan had just finished wrapping the warrior's wound when a deep, mechanical roar echoed through the forest. The ground trembled. Leaves and glowing spores fell from the towering trees. The warrior's expression changed instantly, from pain to pure alarm. No, they found me, she whispered. Ethan turned to look. The arrival of the enemy. A massive, black ship descended through the violet sky. It was sleek, menacing, and covered in strange glowing symbols. As it neared the ground, its thrusters sent dust and debris flying in all directions. The moment it touched down, a metallic hiss filled the air. The ship's ramp lowered, revealing monstrous figures stepping into the light. They weren't human. The hunters. They stood tall, their bodies a terrifying fusion of flesh and machine. Some had armored plating instead of skin. Others had exposed wires running along their limbs. Their glowing red eyes scanned the area like predators locking on to prey. Each of them carried advanced weapons, sleek, deadly-looking rifles that hummed with energy. One of them, larger than the rest, stepped forward. Its mechanical voice echoed coldly. Target located. Retrieve the artifact. Eliminate the human. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. Nowhere to run. The warrior struggled to stand, gripping her sword tightly. "We have to move," she said, her voice urgent. Ethan hesitated. "What do they want?" She glanced at the glowing crystal still clutched in his hand. "That." Ethan's grip tightened. His mind raced. Should he run? Fight? Surrender? The red-eyed hunters raised their weapons. The choice was no longer his. No time to think. Ethan barely had time to react. The hunters raised their weapons, red energy crackling at their tips. "Run!" the warrior shouted, gripping his arm. They sprinted into the glowing forest just as the first shot fired. A tree behind them exploded into splinters. The ground shook from the impact. Ethan's heart pounded. His breath came in sharp gasps. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a hero. He was just a man trying to survive. And yet here he was, running for his life with an alien warrior by his side. The crystal's vision. As they weaved through the strange jungle, the crystal in Ethan's hands suddenly pulsed. A bright, white glow surrounded his fingers. Then, without warning, a vision. Ethan gasped as images flashed in his mind. A vast ruin. Ancient stone structures covered in glowing symbols. And deep within it, a massive, swirling portal. It wasn't just any portal. It was a way out. The path ahead. Ethan stumbled, the vision fading as quickly as it came. The warrior caught him before he fell. "What happened?" she asked, breathless. Ethan stared at her, realization dawning. "I know where we need to go." Another energy blast tore through the trees behind them. The hunters were closing in. "Then we run faster," she said, gripping his hand tighter. With renewed urgency, they pushed forward, toward the ruins, toward the unknown, toward their only chance of escape. The ancient gateway. Ethan and the warrior reached a massive stone structure deep within the ruins. Towering pillars covered in glowing symbols stretched toward the sky. In the center stood an enormous circular portal, its surface shimmering like liquid light. "This is it," Ethan gasped, gripping the glowing crystal. The warrior, still weak from her wounds, placed a hand on the carvings. The portal reacted, pulsing with energy. But before they could step through, a metallic clank echoed behind them. Surrounded. The hunters had arrived. Dozens of red eyes glowed in the darkness. Their leader, the towering cyborg, stepped forward. "You cannot escape," it growled, raising its weapon. Ethan's heart pounded. They were trapped. No way out. Unless... The vision. Suddenly, the crystal flared in his hand. A rush of images filled his mind. Flashes of battle. He and the warrior, fighting side by side. Standing against an army of machines. Protecting entire worlds. This wasn't just about survival. This was destiny. A new purpose. Ethan looked at the warrior. "We don't run," he said firmly. She studied him, then nodded. "Then we fight." She activated her energy sword. Ethan grabbed a weapon from a fallen hunter. The portal shimmered behind them, a possible escape. Or a gateway to something greater. The choice was clear. No way back. Ethan stood at the edge of destiny. The ancient portal pulsed behind him, an open door to safety. In front of him, the hunters closed in, their weapons humming with deadly energy. His body screamed for escape. His mind told him to run. But his heart told him something else. The unspoken bond. He turned to the alien warrior. Her silver skin shimmered under the glow of the portal. Her golden eyes, fierce yet vulnerable, locked onto his. No words were needed. They understood each other. She had fought alone for too long. And Ethan, he had spent his life searching for a purpose. Now they had one. Together. The power within. He gripped the glowing crystal. A surge of energy erupted from within, wrapping around them like a shield of light. The carvings on the portal flared in response, ancient symbols rearranging themselves into something new. A message. The future is made by those who stand. The hunters hesitated. Ethan smiled. Then let's make the future. The battle begins. The warrior raised her energy sword. Ethan raised his fist, the crystal pulsing with raw power. The first hunter lunged, and the fight for destiny began. Ethan felt the crystal's energy surge through his body. The ancient gateway hummed, waiting to be activated, but the cybernetic hunters had already surrounded them. Their glowing red eyes locked onto him, and the alien warrior. There was no escape, unless they fought. He turned to her. She was wounded but determined, gripping her energy blade tightly. Her silver skin shimmered under the strange sky.